Smalls was born in 1839 in Beaufort, South Carolina. In 1851, Smalls was hired out by his owner as a laborer in Charleston. During those years, he held various jobs, eventually leading to his position as a pilot aboard the Planter. He was a gifted navigator and knew the winding inlets of the South Carolina coast as well as any man. His bold escape under the noses of the Confederates that day made headlines across the North. He became an instant sensation.
Robert Smalls was an American politician, publisher, businessman, and maritime pilot, born into slavery in Beaufort, South Carolina. He freed himself, his crew, and his family during the American Civil War by commandeering a Confederate transport ship, the CSS Planter, in Charleston Harbor on May 13, 1862, and sailing it from Confederate-controlled waters of the harbor to the U.S. blockade that surrounded it. He then piloted the ship to the Union-controlled enclave in Beaufort Port Royal Hilton, the head area, where it became a Union warship. His example and persuasion helped convince President Abraham Lincoln to accept African-American soldiers into the Union Army. After the Civil War, he returned to Beaufort, South Carolina as a Republican, to the South Carolina legislature and United States House of Representatives. During the Reconstruction era, Smalls authored state legislation providing for South Carolina to have the first free and compulsory public school system in the United States. He founded the Republican Party of South Carolina. Smalls was the last Republican to represent South Carolina's 5th Congressional District until the election of Mick Mulvaney in 2011. Robert Smalls was born in 1839 to Lydia Polite, a woman enslaved by Henry McKee. She gave birth to Smalls in a cabin behind McKee's house at 511 Prince Street in Beaufort, South Carolina. Fast forward all the way after the Civil War so you guys can see the miracles God does when you have a relationship with him. Check out this beautiful gesture made by Mr. Smalls when you let go and let God by getting out of his way. Immediately following the war, Smalls returned to his native Beaufort, South Carolina, where he purchased his former master's house, which today is a landmark, 511 Prince Street, which Union tax authorities had seized in 1863 for refusal to pay taxes. Later, the former owner sued to regain the property, but Smalls retained ownership in the court case. The case became an important precedent in other similar cases. His mother Lydia lived with Mr. Smalls for the remainder of her life. And this is the beautiful thing. He allowed his former master's wife, the elderly Jane McKee, to live out the rest of her days in her former residence. Smalls spent 9 months learning to read and write. He also purchased a 2-story Beaumont building to use as a school for African-American children. He also, apart from politics, became a prominent, successful businessman and lived what we call today the American dream as a free man. God bless America. Wow. Editors, roll clip, fair use.
10 minutes is far too short a time to go over all the causes and crusades of Robert Smalls. The man who escaped slavery by audaciously stealing a Confederate warship underneath their very noses, never backed down in the face of adversity. The young man who had to flee slavery because he could not afford to purchase his wife's freedom, after the war used the money given to him by the Union as a prize for capturing the CSS Planter to purchase his former owner's home. The young man who was central to the Union decision to incorporate black troops into the Union Army eventually was made a major general in the South Carolina militia. In 2004, when the U.S. Army named a massive Besson-class logistic support vehicle the USAV Major General Robert Smalls, it became the first U.S. Army vessel to be named after an African American. Through it all, he faced threats of violence and discrimination. In the end, he even had to fight for his pension. It turns out that the first black captain of a United States ship was, because of his race, never officially commissioned. Robert Smalls served throughout the Civil War 17 engagements, technically, as a civilian. Robert Smalls died of diabetes in 1915 at the age of 75. On his monument is a quotation from a statement he made to the South Carolina legislature in 1895. "My race needs no special defense. Their history in this country proves them to be the equal of any man, anywhere. All they need is an equal chance in the battle of life."
In the early years of Reconstruction, Robert Smalls returned to the state from which he had escaped the bonds of slavery only a few years earlier, and looked forward to participating in the democratic process from which he and others like him were excluded for nearly 200 years.
South Carolina was home. And this is a time, when he comes back, this is a time that many African Americans thought that a change was going to happen, and that they could make a difference, and that they wanted to be a part of that change. And Robert Smalls very much wanted to be a part of that change, along with lots of other people.
Smalls enjoyed tremendous popularity in the predominantly black South Carolina Low Country, virtually guaranteeing he would yield tremendous political influence in Beaufort and throughout the region.
He was an easy leader to pick out within the black community, and there was little that whites, if they wanted to put him down, they weren't going to be able to, certainly during Reconstruction, because he had too much prestige and too many people supporting him.
Smalls was a founding member of the Republican Party in South Carolina and was a delegate to the 1868 Constitutional Convention. It would be one of the most progressive constitutions ever adopted by South Carolina, providing for the first time a true multiracial democracy through which both whites and blacks would have a voice in the democratic process. During his career as a politician, Smalls served in the State House of Representatives and State Senate in the capital city of Columbia, and was elected to the United States House of Representatives.
Another example from history that we're presenting is a man named Robert Smalls, who was born in 1839 in Sumter, North Carolina. He was a slave working on a ship. And one night when his masters went to leave, one night when they left the ship, he commandeered the ship, and along with his 5 other crewmen, they sneaked out of the port, picked up their families, and put their master's hat on, and waved and went past 5 different garrisons and turned the supply ship over to the Union Navy. Well, Robert Smalls was celebrated throughout the country, and as a consequence of his heroic actions, Lincoln admitted blacks in to fight for the Union Army. Well, after the war, Robert Smalls became a successful businessman and got elected to the Congress during Reconstruction. And he went back and purchased the plantation on which he was a slave. And because the family of the slave master had become destitute, in an act of radical grace, he took in the wife and children of the slave master and even allowed her to remain in the master bedroom, as she had become delusional and didn't realize that the war was over. And I think that's a marvelous story of the resilience of Black Americans to thrive and achieve against the odds, to be born a slave, and through the free enterprise system, earn enough money to come back and actually purchase a plantation in which he was a slave, and exhibited the kind of radical grace that enabled him to take in and care for the family of the slave master.
Hey guys, it's Jose, your regular Joe Blow again, keeping an eye out and my ears open to wonderful history stories not taught in schools. And that's a shame, because we don't get true American history. All we got was bombarded with a lot of bad things that happened, but I always question, what about the good things America has awarded us? Because America is so young. They keep teaching before America was established. So my job is to bring forward to you what America really stands for and what we are about. I love to see the real American spirit, plus the way it used to be, with so much faith in God, always putting him first. Anything is possible in America, as you can see. Guys, but as always, do your research for a deeper dive. Remember, I can only do like 8 to 12 minute videos. There's so much to talk about Mr. Smalls, there's no space. So thank you guys as always for the support, because with your support, so much appreciated. Helps me do my best to bring you the best. God bless you and God bless America. Stay free, guys.